So last night was an extremely rare situation in college football. Now, we haven't gotten the ratings yet, but can you guys remember the last time there was a legitimate 10 o'clock Eastern time start and the game had that much atmosphere and that much hype, and that might end up being the highest rated game from week number 3. I can't remember. I mean, you had some big matchups a few years ago with USC playing at 10 o'clock, but that Colorado State-Colorado game, I didn't even know they were that big of rivals, and then the Jay Norvell thing comes out, and Deion Sanders responds with the sunglasses, and then, I mean, these teams just hate each other. They were chirping at each other before the game. You got the cheap shot on Travis Hunter. I guess I'll give my comments on that. I don't think it was an egregiously horrible play. Obviously, it was a cheap shot. It is what it is. You hate that Travis Hunter is going to be out now for a few weeks because Colorado is going to be massive underdogs at Oregon, and they desperately would need Travis Hunter. I think Colorado, they're obviously very likely going to lose that game at Oregon. They're probably going to be 20-point underdogs in it. But when it comes to this, and then you got Shedeur Sanders poking the dude in the eye, it's just crazy. Colorado State had like 16 penalties for 170 yards or something. But I'll be honest, Colorado State, you gotta like that performance. That was a good performance. They play prevent defense late. You can't do that. It's an 8-point game. I hate when teams play prevent defense. What are you preventing? There's 2 minutes left. They can go right down the field. This is college. Within 2 minutes of the half, the clock stops on first down. They changed that rule. It should have originally stayed the same. We all know that. But either way, guys, crazy game last night. I cannot remember another game that started at 10 o'clock that had that atmosphere. And then there's a bunch of people that always do this. It's like they gatekeep whether or not kids should storm the field or not, favored by 24, and you all storm the field, LOL, embarrassing. There's a lot of people that were saying this. I just never understood the fixation on this. Like, seriously. It would be one thing if Ohio State fans stormed the field beating Western Kentucky. Okay, I can understand that. But this is a Colorado team that went 1-11 last year. The hype for this game was insane. You've got like 30 celebrities on the sideline. It's just a weird situation, and you're facing a rival. You come back. Is Colorado State very good? No. Is Colorado probably only going to finish 7-5? Yes. But it's still a really fun game with a crazy atmosphere. You've got Big Noon there. You've got ESPN Game Day. And it's like, is my life really changing if students storm the field or not? Like, I could care less. Legitimately, if you want to storm the field in a game like this because it's a crazy environment, and again, like, this is the first 10 o'clock game that started on the East Coast time where it's like, this is the game of the day. The first one that I can remember, and some of that is because it was a week slate. I mean, week 3 was brutal. There were no ranked v ranked matchups, but I don't know, man. That Colorado State game was crazy. Travis Hunter is going to be out for a few weeks. We'll have to see. But the reason Colorado is so interesting and fun to watch is because they have a horrible defense. And it's obvious that, Deion Sanders going in there, replacing a bunch of players, they just don't have the blue chip defensive players to really make a difference. So every one of their games is going to be high scoring. And we had another one where Colorado State up 8 points. Could you imagine if Colorado State would have won that game? That would have been even crazier. But yeah, Colorado State very easily covers that 23-point spread. So in terms of the future for, Colorado, it's not looking too good with a very tough Pac-12. I do think they end up making a bowl considering they're already 3-0 and they have a few easier games. I think they have a game against Stanford, maybe Arizona State. So they should at least probably get to 7-5, but losing Travis Hunter for a few weeks, that is going to be pretty rough. Either way, that was a crazy game and certainly a very unique situation with a game at 10 o'clock being like the main attraction and main event. And then you've got this. So Florida, Tennessee, Josh Heupel is a complete clown. He calls a timeout for literally no reason with like 10 seconds left in the game. It's a 2-possession game. Florida, the game itself was very strange because it seems like Florida turtled up the entire second half. Now, I've seen teams get a big lead and then late third quarter, early fourth quarter completely turtle up and just play conservative. But it was like Florida came out in the second half and they were up 27 or 26-7. It was a weird score, and they just were like, let's just try and milk the clock and win this game. Tennessee ends up outgaining Florida in the second half, like 280-58 in terms of total yards, but Florida, they did get a lot of calls from the ref kicking the ball. This was a crazy game at the Swamp. I said Florida would win this game in an upset. I did not trust Joe Milton, and look at what happens, and then the coach calls the timeout late for no reason. It instigates Graham Mertz getting hit when he's going down or whatever, taking a knee, maybe a little late hit, and then they go to defend him, and a little fight breaks out. It could have been a lot more ugly at the end of the game. That fight was very tame. I thought it was going to get really, really bad, and this happened at like 10:15 at night, so the Colorado State game was already kicking off, and this goes on. But yeah, that's a big win for Florida. They improved to 2-1. They had that brutal loss week 1 to Utah, and if you are Tennessee, you have to consider investing into your future with Nico Lamanleva, starting him and really getting him ready for next season. When you look at Tennessee's schedule, all is not lost. You know, you can say it's a brutal loss to Florida. It is, but you also have to understand it was in the Swamp. The refs were against you. You dominated them in the second half. There is a few positives. Tennessee playing in the SEC East, that division is horrible outside of Georgia. So it is a place where you can still win 9 games, make a very solid bowl, and go into next year with your superstar young quarterback, getting him some experience. That's what I would do if I was Tennessee. Good for Florida, though, getting a big win in the Swamp either way. Ranked teams with a loss in week 3, Tennessee. So I don't think Tennessee is going to move outside of the top 25, obviously, because they were like 11th. They'll probably move down to about number 20 if I had to guess. And then I think Kansas State, who was ranked 15th, they should move outside of the top 25. Maybe they'll be like right on the fringe, right on borderline in terms of it, but I do think they will be bumped down. They lost to Missouri by 3 points on the road. If you're a Kansas State fan, you've got to be really annoyed. How does a college kicker make a 61-yard field goal, folks? That doesn't even make sense, but it happened. And then you've got these 4 games. Yeah, so this is brutal here for the Big 12. Miami of Ohio beating Cincinnati, and the backstory to that is Cincinnati hosts Oklahoma next week. Cincinnati was doing extremely well in their first 2 games according to the analytics. It would not be far-fetched to say if Cincinnati beat Miami of Ohio like 31-7 or 38-14, they would be ranked next week and they would have a home game against Oklahoma. By the way, how crazy is that? Oklahoma is going to Cincinnati, and that's considered a ranked game. I was just thinking about this in my head. Because Cincinnati joins the Big 12 and you have Houston joining, BYU joining, it's kind of weird because Texas and Oklahoma, this is the only year they're going to be in the Big 12 with Cincinnati and those other teams. So technically, when Oklahoma goes to Cincinnati, that can be a virtual non-conference game. I mean, that's basically what it is. Oklahoma at Cincinnati, it feels like a non-conference game. So we're getting non-conference games in conference play. How crazy is that? And Oklahoma looks really good. Cincinnati, that's going to be a good environment. It's tough that that's not a night game, but there are so many good games next week. They really couldn't make it a night game. I believe that's a noon start time at Nippert Stadium. But Cincinnati, that's a brutal loss. You have Missouri beating Kansas State. You have Ohio beating Iowa State. Matt Campbell going ballistic. Matt Campbell was walking out. Some dude said, "You're on the hot seat, you're on the hot seat." And he starts like having a roid rage episode trying to fight the dude. It was a crazy situation. What happened to Matt Campbell? Matt Campbell should have struck while the iron was hot at Iowa State 3 or 4 years ago, taken a big, time job, get a massive paycheck, and then if you get fired in a year or two, you still make a bunch of money. The Charlie Strong method, he didn't do that. He stayed at Iowa State. And even with Brock Purdy, Brock Purdy performed really bad his final year at Iowa State. That's why he was the last pick in the draft. And look at Brock Purdy now. Like, Brock Purdy would be the perfect quarterback to lead Iowa State, you would think, to like a New Year's Six Bowl. Like, look at how good he is in the NFL. I was just thinking about that, but he didn't really play that well at Iowa State his final year. And Ohio, they go on the road to Ohio. You had some very weird games. We're going to talk about the Alabama game in a second. Oh my God. But you had Alabama at South Florida. You had Oklahoma at Tulsa. Iowa State at a MAC school. And they lose 10-7, and they were down 10-0 late in the fourth quarter. And then South Alabama, thoroughly crushes Oklahoma State 33-7. Oklahoma State is terrible. I don't know how Oklahoma State won last week against, I think they beat Arizona State. Arizona State's really bad as well. Didn't Arizona State get shut out by Fresno State? I think they lost like 29-0 to Fresno State last night. And then you have this game. How about Portland State? The story of Portland State is unbelievable. They get destroyed by Oregon. Oregon in week 1 drops an 80-burger. 81-7, and then Portland State, this is just unnecessary, a 90-burger against North American, and they had 91 points at the end of 3 quarters. I thought they were going to get the 100. You got to at least get to 99. It would have been hilarious, but I guess they just didn't try in the 4th quarter, considering nobody scored there. And then you had Kansas. A lot of people don't even, know this game happened. Kansas really struggling with Nevada. That is a horrible look for Kansas. Nevada is terrible this year. Like, Nevada has been considered by the analytics as one of, if not the worst teams in FBS. And you can see very, very close game. Kansas ends up winning 31-24. Kansas is coming off that good performance against Illinois at home. I don't know why they scheduled this game on the road. I guess, Kansas really hasn't been a good football team recently. They do improve to 3-0, but that is a brutal, brutal game. You're tied with Nevada in the 4th quarter, and then Alabama and South Florida. My goodness, I don't know what Alabama's going to do. I would imagine they go back to Jalen Milroe. Maybe they stick with Ty Simpson, but it can't be Tyler Buckner. It just can't. Alabama, the thing is, they have a winnable game, I feel, at home against Ole Miss, but you have to choose the right quarterback. You're at home. We will see, but this game, Alabama, South Florida, it gets delayed with like 9 minutes left in the 2nd quarter for an hour, right? And Alabama did this thing where they played on the road at South Florida for recruiting purposes because it's a de facto neutral site game, considering South Florida plays their home games at Raymond James Stadium, which is an NFL stadium. So it's recruiting. Like, half Alabama fans are going to be there, and they were definitely playing with fire, and they got burned. Because if you have a game in South Florida in mid-September, you're going to be dealing with crazy weather. It started downpouring. They ended up going into the delay. Comes back out. It's sunny. And Alabama, South Florida tied at 3. Bama ends up pulling away. What a weird game that was as well. Either way, Alabama, they have a serious quarterback problem. Maybe they will stick with Ty Simpson. The problem with Ty Simpson, I mean, that dude just took like 10 sacks. He's just not very mobile. Maybe it was just because he was nervous. It was jitters. He didn't want to throw an interception. He didn't want to force it. Maybe he'll be a lot more comfortable starting a game at home, against an Ole Miss team. I don't know. Either way, very strange non-conference game where Alabama goes on the road to the state of Florida, plays South Florida as 34-point favorites, and the game goes into a delay. They end up winning late, but Alabama probably falling to like number 13 or number 14. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.